Hi, I'm Kath. Welcome to Veg Patch Kitchen Cookery School. Today we're going to talk about the 3 different yeasts that you can buy in the UK and how to use them in your bread making. So there's Easy Bake, otherwise known as instant or fast action yeast, active dried yeast and fresh yeast. So to begin with, the one that's most popularly used in the UK and the one that I use most when I'm baking for my family because it's most convenient is Easy Bake, otherwise known as instant or fast action. Now there is a reason for that name. You can see very, very small granule size, like a very tiny pellet. And as soon as you add that to the flour and then add water, that dissolves very readily. And there is a lot more active yeast cells in this type of yeast than there is in the other 2 types of yeast available to us. So that's the reason it's fast action, because it has so many more active yeast cells and gets to work so much quicker, because it can be readily absorbed by the water and dissolved. Everything gets to work very quickly. The other thing that's added to it, so it's got vitamin C added to it, which is there to strengthen the gluten in your dough and will help retain more carbon dioxide. So that's the reason it's got ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, added to that. It's a dough improver. In this sachet, there's 7 grams of yeast in here. And it's a really convenient way to buy yeast because it's got a use by date on the packet. It's fresh until you open it, or until it's past its use by date. And so you know that it's going to be a good yeast to use. It's going to be reliable. But actually, I only ever use about 1/3 a packet each time I use this. And because I'm regularly baking, that easily gets used up within a fortnight of it being open, which is absolutely fine, and it will last longer being open too. But I use as little as I can get away with. So instead of the 7 grams, I probably use about 2 grams in 500 grams of flour. And then we've got active dried yeast. Now you can see here a much bigger pellet size, and there's less active yeast cells in this yeast than there is in this yeast. So it is slower at working, which is not a bad thing. The only thing that puts me off using active dried yeast is because of its larger pellet size, you do have to rehydrate that in water first. If you just mix that straight into your flour, and then try to add water and mix like you would with the Easy Bake, what you're going to end up with is this isn't going to dissolve readily. So for this one, you have to hydrate it in a bit of water. Now all that means is you just put it in with perhaps 50 grams of water and mix it until it's dissolved, and then use that in your loaf and then measure the rest of the water in. So it's not a massive step. And if that's all that you can get hold of, then do use that. Don't use it if you're making bread in a bread maker. It just won't work because it has to be hydrated first. And normally bread makers are set to a timer. The activity of the yeast, it will have just died before the bread is mixed. So it's not one recommended for use in bread maker. Okay, fresh yeast. Harder to get hold of in the UK. It is getting easier to get hold of actually as time goes on and more people are making bread at home. And fresh yeast lasts anything from 3 to 4 weeks from the point of manufacture. Okay, so it doesn't last long. You need to use it quickly. It's better when it's used really fresh. Keep it in the fridge. It's really important. If you don't keep it in the fridge, it will die very quickly. And you can freeze it. It loses some of its activity when it's frozen, so you'll have to compensate by adding a little bit more when you use it. When it thaws as a watery liquid, because obviously this is just compressed water and yeast. So where it thaws as a liquid, so don't be concerned when that happens, that's perfectly normal. How do you tell if fresh yeast is fresh? It should be lovely and malleable, and you should be able to play with it like Play-Doh or window putty. It should smell sweet, and really sweet and yeasty, but not sour at all, and have no bitterness. And if it's dry and crumbly, it's it's past its best. So how do you use these 3 yeasts in your baking? This one has to be dissolved in water, the active dried yeast. Dissolve it in a little bit of water first. The easy bake is really simple to use. You just sprinkle it into your flour, add water, it gets to work straight away. Fresh yeast, you can either dissolve it in water, or what I more commonly do is just break it up like you would butter when you're working butter through flour for pastry or scones. So I'm just rubbing it through. It doesn't have to be particularly small before you use it. The water will readily dissolve the fresh yeast as you're mixing and as you're doing your stretches and folds.
Thanks for watching. I hope that was useful, and I hope now you understand how you use those 3 different yeasts in your bread making. I hope it's answered any questions you might have. If you've got further questions, please comment below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Visit my website, vegpatchkitchen.co.uk, where you can get regular tips and recipes from me.